In the late 1800s, asbestos stopped being a mineral curiosity and started becoming a business. Industrial growth brought new factories, crowded cities, and bigger fires that spread fast and killed workers. Builders needed materials that did not burn. Asbestos fibers did not flame like wood or cotton. They handled heat. That simple fact changed everything. Manufacturers treated it as a modern solution, ready to be mined, shipped and sold. Once companies learned the fiber could be spun, mixed and packed into other products, it fit industry like a tool. It went into insulation for pipes and boilers, into cement, into wallboard, into cloth and rope used around engines and furnaces. The pitch stayed the same: fireproof, reliable and cheap. As mines expanded and processing improved, the price dropped. The more it was used, the more normal it seemed. That belief fed a cycle. If a new building promised safety, asbestos made the claim sound real. If a factory pushed higher heat and higher output, asbestos helped protect the machinery and the structure. Fire codes and insurers favoured anything that reduced flames, and asbestos products delivered that on paper. So it moved from specialty use to everyday construction. It became part of the modern age's toolkit, long before anyone asked what the dust did. In the early 1900s, asbestos stopped being a special add-on and started becoming a standard layer in modern life. Shipbuilders used it to wrap boilers and pipes because it held heat in and slowed fire down. Factories packed it around engines and furnaces for the same reason. Builders mixed it into insulation and wall systems. The fibre did its job. It also followed workers everywhere. This new routine depended on speed. Insulation crews cut, sawed and packed asbestos into place, then moved on to the next job. The material crumbled easily, which made it easy to handle and easy to spread. Dust drifted during installation, repairs and ordinary maintenance. It settled on clothes, tools and hair. Most people treated it like nuisance debris, not a hazard. Work continued, day after day. As industries grew, asbestos grew with them. It got written into specifications, ordered in bulk, and stocked as a dependable supply item. On ships, it became part of standard safety practice. In factories, it became part of efficiency. In buildings, it became part of progress. The more it got used, the more normal it felt. And that normality mattered. A dangerous exposure looked like ordinary work. The first warning signs did not come from headlines. They came from clinic notes and insurance files. Doctors treated insulation workers who did not bounce back from coughs the way others did. Breath shortened, fatigue stayed. X-rays and examinations showed lungs that looked stiff and scarred, even in men still considered young. The pattern felt wrong. It appeared again and again, tied to the same kind of work. At the same time, insurers started noticing something they could not ignore. Claims clustered around certain trades. Disability arrived early. Deaths came sooner than expected. For an industry built on steady labour, that mattered. Medical examiners and company physicians recorded roughened lung tissue and a slow, choking decline that did not match ordinary infection. This was not a single bad factory or one unlucky crew. It repeated across jobs that handled asbestos. Outside those records, life carried on. Asbestos still looked like a practical safeguard, packed into pipes, sprayed into walls, wrapped around boilers. The public reputation stayed clean because the damage stayed hidden in bodies, not buildings. Workers often left the job before the worst symptoms arrived, so the cause seemed to vanish with time. But the early files kept stacking up. The evidence built quietly, long before most people realized there was a problem at all. As the medical concern hardened, the biggest asbestos players did not treat it like an emergency. They treated it like a problem to price and contain. Executives ordered quiet reviews. Company doctors examined chest x-rays, tracked sick leave, and compared notes across plants. Consultants summarized what the numbers suggested, then marked the reports for internal eyes only. The fiber stayed on the market. The real shift happened inside boardrooms, not on factory floors. Once those findings existed, information became something to manage. Results got edited down, delayed, or filed away. Some companies funded research with careful limits, steering attention towards safer-sounding explanations and away from the dust itself. Public statements stayed confident. Brochures and sales teams kept repeating the same simple promise: fire protection, reliability, modern progress. Meanwhile, workers and even many local doctors lacked the full picture. Uncertainty protected the product. Silence reduced liability. Over time, the industry built a routine for handling the risk without admitting it. Legal departments monitored claims. Insurers adjusted premiums. Managers introduced small procedural tweaks that looked responsible, but avoided the one change that mattered most: removing asbestos from the job. The emerging health crisis got translated into paperwork and strategy. What could have become a public warning turned into a private calculation. A medical alarm turned into a controlled corporate exposure. World War II arrived and industry shifted into emergency mode. The military needed ships, planes, vehicles, and munitions fast, and all of it had to survive heat and fire. Asbestos fit that demand perfectly. It insulated boilers, wrapped pipes, lined engines, and protected wiring. Orders surged. Production ran day and night, and the people doing the work stood closer than ever to the fiber that made it possible. Shipbuilding drove the biggest spike. New workers poured into coastal yards, many with little training and no warning. They cut asbestos cloth, mixed insulation cement, and packed it into tight spaces below decks. Each step released dust. It settled on hair, skin, and clothing, then shook loose with every movement. Ventilation rarely kept up with wartime speed. The job got done, but the air stayed loaded. As the war expanded, asbestos followed the supply chain. Factories that had never handled it before started using it for heat shielding, gaskets, brakes, and furnace linings. Small workshops, repair depots, and military bases joined the list. Dust travelled across rooms, down hallways, and into shared break areas. Exposure stopped being limited to a handful of specialised trades. It spread into countless workplaces in plain sight as an accepted cost of victory. After the war, construction and consumer spending surged, and asbestos followed that wave into ordinary life. Insulation was pushed into walls and attics, wrapped around boilers and furnaces, and sprayed onto ceilings for sound and fire control. Builders treated it as modern and responsible. It promised safer homes and cheaper energy. The shift mattered. The material no longer sat mainly in shipyards and factories. It settled into neighborhoods. Schools expanded fast, and asbestos-based products fit the budget and the safety story. Pipes ran through hallways and basements with asbestos coverings. Floor tiles, adhesives, and classroom materials carried fibers too. In many places, the hazard stayed invisible because it looked like normal building work. Yet wear and tear did not stop. Maintenance, small repairs, and aging surfaces released dust in places meant for children, teachers, and custodians. Asbestos also entered consumer goods, multiplying the number of people who handled it without thinking. Heat-resistant pads, appliance parts, brake linings, and do-it-yourself insulation kits brought fibers into garages and laundry rooms. Exposure no longer required a factory badge. It came from routine life, drilling a hole, sanding a patch, replacing a worn part. The risk spread quietly, house by house, until it became a community problem. In the 1960s, the tone shifted from suspicion to proof. Researchers stopped treating asbestos illness as a mystery and started counting cases, tracing jobs, and matching disease to exposure. Then came a crucial link. Mesothelioma, a rare cancer of the lining around the lungs, appeared again and again in people who had breathed asbestos dust. It was too specific to ignore. A material sold as protection now looked like a trigger. The evidence did not stay in medical journals. Studies connected asbestos not only to mesothelioma, but to lung cancer as well, especially in workers who faced heavy dust for years. The long delay between exposure and illness no longer worked as an excuse. It became part of the warning. People got sick decades later when the job had ended and the insulation was still in place. The risk followed them home in time. By the 1970s, regulators and the media faced a problem they could not file away as isolated tragedy. The pattern looked national. Public health agencies weighed limits, warnings, and workplace rules while reporters explained a threat hiding inside ordinary buildings and industrial routines. What had been minimized for decades now demanded a public response. The turning point came when the question changed from whether asbestos harmed people to how long it had been known. By the late 1970s, the consequences stopped being abstract and started arriving in court. Sick workers and families filed lawsuits, and the numbers climbed fast. What had once been treated as a technical debate became a question of responsibility. Who knew and when? Companies faced demands for medical records, memos, and test results. Judges ordered discovery, and suddenly the paper trail mattered as much as the medical evidence. As cases moved forward, internal documents surfaced that reshaped the public understanding of the risk. Lawyers pointed to warnings, discussions of dust control, and decisions that weighed cost against exposure. The legal pressure spread through insurers, suppliers, and contractors, pulling more of the asbestos economy into the fight. Some manufacturers began partial phase-outs, replacing asbestos in certain products to reduce liability. It sounded like progress, but it came unevenly. Because the biggest problem remained in place. Millions of buildings still contained asbestos insulation installed decades earlier, now aging, cracking, and waiting for disturbance. Bans and substitutions did not remove what already lined pipes, boilers, ceilings, and walls. Renovations, repairs, and demolitions kept releasing fibers, often without clear warning to the people doing the work. The lawsuits grew, but the material stayed. That was the trap of legacy asbestos. By the 1990s, asbestos did not vanish. It changed jobs. A new business grew around removing what earlier decades had installed everywhere. Abatement crews worked under strict rules, sealed off areas, negative air machines, special vacuums, protective suits, and labelled waste headed to approved landfills. Training and licensing spread. The fibre became something to control, not to use. But control cost money, and the bills landed on owners, schools, and local governments. Those costs drove the next conflict. Some building managers delayed work, did the minimum, or chose cheaper contractors who cut corners. Enforcement stayed uneven. One city inspected aggressively, another barely did. The result looked tidy on paper, yet risky in real life. A rushed removal could release more fibres than leaving material undisturbed. And when budgets tightened, priorities shifted from health to schedules. The abatement industry grew fast, and so did the pressure to finish quickly and move on. During the 2000s, renovations became the surprise danger point. Old schools upgraded heating systems, homeowners remodeled kitchens, and contractors drilled, sanded, and demolished into hidden insulation. Asbestos showed up in unexpected layers, and tests were skipped to save time. Workers without proper protection tracked dust through hallways and into dumpsters. Even when rules existed, they failed when no one checked. The fibre stayed locked in countless older buildings, waiting for the next remodel to set it loose again. In the present day, asbestos-related illness still emerged, even when the dust had been breathed decades earlier. That delay became the cruel trick of the fibre. People retired, raised families and moved on, then faced a diagnosis that traced back to a job site from the past. The promise had been simple: fireproof safety. The outcome had been slow damage that never truly stopped. Mesothelioma, lung cancer, and severe scarring still appeared because the body never treated those fibres like normal dust. Once lodged deep, they stayed, irritating tissue year after year. Doctors asked about old workplaces, old ships, old boiler rooms, and the timeline often stretched back to youth. Many victims never saw themselves as asbestos workers at all. Exposure had followed renovation, maintenance, and everyday proximity. Asbestos insulation also still lingered inside older buildings, hidden behind walls, above ceilings, around pipes and inside aging fireproof coatings. It stayed quiet when left alone, then turned dangerous when cut, drilled, sanded, or torn out. Rules existed, crews trained and labels posted, yet mistakes still happened and shortcuts still spread fibres. The miracle material of the past left a modern inheritance: risk, cost, and irreversible loss.